Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the tea. Tea Time with Dr. Tarver was established to provide information and resources for people to help you along your wellness journey. It is not a substitute for counseling, and it's just intended to be additional resources that you could utilize as you try to be your best self. So today we are going to be discussing the second series, the second video in this series, where we're talking about how we've been affected by relationships we saw early in our lives, how that shows up as we are adults in our relationships. And so the focus of today is what happens when we grow up around people who are critical or people who are negative. And the title of this actually comes from one of my high school classmates, Bishop Julian Lott, who stated in his sermon Sunday that when a person says something to you, it is true that they said it, but it's not necessarily true what they said. So, in other words, just because someone says something doesn't mean it becomes our truth. And so, we're going to talk about how we are affected when people say negative things about us and they're constantly critical. So I know you all are asking the question, well, who is this they? Well, the they can be anyone. The they can be your brothers and sisters. It can be your parents, your grandparents. It can be aunts and uncles, cousins, people who have been adopted in your life. You know, we always make family friends into relatives. It can be people that you went to school with or peers of yours. It can be people that you worked with or even your supervisors in various places that can have that type of effect on you as you're developing into who you are as your adult self. So what does that essentially mean? What does that look like? Well, I will tell you that there is no shortage of people who could be critical in your life. And as you think about what criticism can look like, it can come from a variety of different ways. Now, criticism can be about how we look, our attire, our hair, amount of makeup you wear or not. It could be about your eyebrows. It could be about your size and your shape. It could be about your career path. It could be about the goals that you set for yourself, your dreams. It could be where you choose to go to school to further your education. It can be about where you decide you want to live. So it can come from a variety of places, and it can be about a variety of things. Now, there are a lot of reasons why people are critical. And oftentimes we internalize why people are critical and not consider the source of their criticism. Like, why is this person so negative? Why are they so critical? We just hang on to their words and internalize them. Well, sometimes people are critical because they're afraid of who you might become. They're afraid that if they don't affect your choices, if they don't say things that will allow you to make decisions that benefit them, then they won't be able to get what they want. And we definitely see this in terms of our family members who sometimes just want to keep us stuck. They want us to choose to do things that would allow us to spend time with them. It may be that they want us to not advance so that we're still around, so they have other people to be around. We've definitely known that there can be jealousy in families, and people can be fearful of your gifts, of who you will become, that you could potentially outshine them. We see that in terms of our coworkers as well. People are afraid of the successful you, so they try to keep you trapped. People are afraid of you leaving them. And so they'll become critical of you, particularly to ostracize you from other people so that you won't seek other support outside of them. That's one of the things that people often do in relationships, that could be friendships or romantic partnerships, is I make you feel so bad about yourself that you will think nobody else would want to be around you, or that you don't have any skills and talents. We find that sometimes that criticism can be in the form of name calling, insulting you, putting you down. And I think when people tear us down with their words, that is definitely one way that they chip away at our strength and chip away at our value in ourselves, so that we don't feel like we have the capacity to do any better. I think sometimes we end up being critical of people because we see in people some of our own challenges. So I know the mistakes that I've made. I feel like you're similar to me. And so I nitpick about at you about your mistakes, your challenges. I criticize you for the things you do that I myself are doing, things maybe I haven't gotten a handle on. And we see this often with people saying, things like, which is really funny to me. You're always messing up in relationships, or you never finish things that you start. You are constantly talking about these dreams, but you never actually put them into any goals. And that's the same thing that these people who are criticizing you are chastising you for, right? Isn't that interesting how what we struggle with, we can see in other people? Now, we don't definitely address it in ourselves, but we want to show up and tell other people how they can be better. Sometimes criticism comes from this place of people thinking they are protecting you, that the world is an unsafe place. And this comes from people being told that there was not safety in the world, or experiencing unsafe things themselves over their lives. And so we find people being really protective. We see this with people who have a history of trauma or abuse. Often they keep the folks they love very close to them. They don't want them to be hurt. They don't want them to make mistakes and bad decisions. We see this when people have had a lot of financial stress in their lives. They want their children not to be financially stressed. So they push the education, they push the financial wellness, but they do it in the form of criticism. And so it's attacking you. And so you don't feel like you can trust your own judgment, and you're not capable, because then they feel like that will steer you in the correct direction. Now, we know that is not an effective strategy, and often does the opposite of that. But when people are coming from, and this is why it's important for us to consider the source, right? When people are coming from dysfunctional places, they tend to do dysfunctional things. And so often we do what we see. And even though we say, hey, I don't want to be like this person when I grow up, or I don't want to have those kind of interactions, or I don't want to make those kind of choices, we are shaped by our environments. And so often things are modeled for us, and we don't even realize we're picking them up. But we are, right? So we're picking up this negative self-worth. We're picking up that we're not important, that we're not going to be able to be capable, that we can't be trusted, because the world around us, we recognize that there are people that can't be trusted, right? So we get kind of lumped into that. And I think oftentimes with criticism, the person that's being critical or negative wouldn't necessarily identify themselves in that way. In fact, if you were to ask them, they would say they were realist, or being honest, or trying to protect you, do what's best for you, trying to steer you in the right direction. You're being hard-headed, right? So we try to put things onto people when they don't receive the way that we're presenting information, as if it's your fault. There's something wrong with you in terms of you being able to hear me, instead of us looking at what we're communicating and how it's being communicated. So how does that show up? And I've already alluded to some of these things. These abusive relationships, we often end up in domestic violence situations where people are mistreating us, devaluing us, often not even treating us as equals, much less humans, because we have come from this place of criticism. So we're used to that. So we think that a person loves us when they're talking to us in that way. But it also tears us down in the sense that we don't feel like we deserve to be treated differently. So if I grew up in a family where this is how people talk to each other, and a lot of times people are caged this in jokes and jabs, but it's still just criticism. The picking at you about how you're shaped, you gained some weight, or the picking at you because you haven't finished this degree, or the picking at you because you are doing well, and so you think you're better, right? So they cage it in jokes, but it still serves the same effect on us, which is that it tears us down and makes us feel less than. I think we often will limit ourselves to make other people happy when we come from these negative and criticism-based environments. We are so focused on getting this love and this attention and this respect from people, or receiving this person's admiration or their acceptance, that we feel like we have to settle for whatever kind of treatment in order to get it, right? So, okay, well, if you're going to validate me, then it would be worth it at the end of the day, is what we tell ourselves. We get resentful too. Like, we feel like we're there for people, but they're not there for us, even though we're putting ourselves in environments where we're constantly trying to prove our worth. And so we're taking on more and more things, and we're not at all receiving any kind of accolades for that, or even financial compensation for that. And so we become resentful about that people don't show up for us in ways that we show up for them, not realizing this is anchored in this critical environment where we always felt like we had to kind of prove ourselves. We can get scared to try new things. It affects our self-esteem. It affects our ability to ask for what we want. We don't think we'll be able to get it, or that it'll be criticized or dismissed. I think it affects our ability to be able to express ourselves, again, because we're worried about how that will be received. Will someone laugh at us? Will they turn it back on us and say our expectations are unrealistic, or call us some kind of name? You're silly, you're stupid, you're crazy. That's one people like to throw around a lot, because it distracts us from actually recognizing that our point is valid. So when people don't have good points to come back to you with, they frequently will resort to the name calling, or frequently will resort to, oh, but here's what you did, in order to not really address the point that you made was valid. We can also pick up these characteristics and become defensive and argumentative ourselves. We can become negative and critical. You will find that people become really bitter and hard over years and years of dealing with this in their families. And you do end up setting up this expectation that you can't trust people, and people aren't going to be there for you. We can go in the other direction of being avoidant and not wanting to have conflict at all. Don't rock the boat. Just try to maneuver almost invisibly so that people aren't saying negative things about you. It makes us hide. And when we're hiding, we definitely can't reach our fullest potential. There's a lot of anxiety, I think, that comes out of this. It's just worry constantly. People feel like they're walking on eggshells. Folks will get to the point when they're about to interact with their family members or these friends or coworkers who are really negative, like their heart rate goes up. They break out in hives. They have difficulty breathing. There's just this sense of dread because I don't want to go into this environment where I feel like I'm going to be attacked. That's also depressing, right? So we see depression come out of this as well, this hopelessness, this worthlessness, and again, that negative self-talk. My situation isn't going to be any different. Like, this is kind of the life I'm stuck in. And I recognize that a lot of people feel like when they're in that pattern of negativity constantly, it's very difficult for them to actually find things that they're joyful about or want to pursue things, because there's just this doom and gloom over everything. And so it just makes you feel like, why bother? And what kind of life is that for a person? I definitely think that it sets us up to be taken advantage of in situations, because we are, again, just so eager to get some kind of positive affirmation that we essentially allow ourselves to be duped, if you will. Like, there's definitely a lot of people, and I know it's jokes made about it, but there are really people who are trying to find love and happiness, and they get on websites and they connect with people. You all have gotten those messages in your inbox from people who their grammar might be bad or the conversation may just seem a little off, but it's this positive attention, and somebody I feel like is actually seeing me. And so next thing you know, I've sent this person money, or next thing you know, I've married this person who I don't even know. Because I feel like they can offer me something I didn't receive from my family. So how am I supposed to deal with this? How am I supposed to be well growing up in an environment where people were so critical and negative all the time, where it's now affected how I see myself and what I feel like are actually opportunities that I can achieve in my life? You all know I'm a big wellness plan kind of person. And so I think it's important for us to really evaluate, right? Like, so let me evaluate how I'm interacting with people. Why am I choosing to interact with the people that I do? Why am I keeping relationships in my life that are negative, right? I've talked to you all before about hoarding. Like, so we relationship hoard. We hoard people. And so we don't want to let these relationships go because we're so fearful of what will happen if I don't have this person, even though they're negative, like they've been in my life all this time. And so how would I function if this person wasn't in this space, in this capacity, telling me what to do, right? Especially if they have really chipped away at my ability to feel like I can make good decisions and handle problems on my own. And I'll ask people, like, why are you continuing to argue with people? Why are you continuing to allow people to devalue you? What is it that you gain from that experience? And so it's important that we're just honest with ourselves, and also realistic about who people can be. I think a lot of times the person that shows up is consistent. Like they're consistently critical, they're consistently negative. They've been that way throughout my life or throughout this time that I've known them. So why am I thinking that they're going to be different? Why do I have expectations that they're going to show up and be somebody different today? Again, that is their truth. It is not the truth, but it is their truth. And their truth is to tear you down because that keeps you in whatever place they want you to be. It does not, however, have to be your truth of limiting you to who you can be. I think it's important we don't compare people. Like a lot of times people, as they look at their relationships with their family, and parents are a big example of this. Like people are always comparing their parents. This other person's father is this other person's mother is this. You cannot compare your parents to other people's parents. Your parents are who they are. Your siblings are who you are. These other people that you have these relationships with, they are who they are. And so this comparison just serves to further defeat us, making us believe that it's not possible for us to have healthy relationships. But also it sets up this unrealistic expectation of hope, this hope in this person being who they are not going to be, that they will show up and be someone different. And I often tell people, like, if you have a cat, do you expect that cat one day is going to just show up and be a dog? No, that cat is going to continue to be a cat. So like, why would I expect something different to pop up from other people? Like, we just have to be realistic about who people are. So what does that mean? That means that I need to stop trying to seek approval from people who will never give me their approval. What I do will never be good enough. Who I am will never be enough for you, because you don't want to value me, because you want to keep me kind of stuck in whatever place this is, stuck in these limitations, stuck in this unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship, whatever it is. And so I can't change you, person. I have to change me. I have to change me having expectations and coming to you when I'm hurting, when I need some support, because you're not going to be able to give it to me. And I don't need to be arguing with you, right? So this is your truth. It is not the truth, but it's your truth. And so how you talk to me is how you feel is appropriate for you to engage with me. So why am I arguing with you about things? Why am I arguing with you about my decisions, my goals, my dreams, my aspirations? I don't need to argue with you about that. Like, I get to make the choice about what I want to do with or without your approval. And sometimes that does mean we have to look at other resources, particularly when we think about stuff like education. I may have to pursue, my family will sometimes hold money over my head, right? I will fund this if you do what I tell you to do. All right. So I'll pay for this car. I'll pay for your college education. I'll give you a down payment on this house. But there's conditions to it. And these conditions are often destructive for us. And so I may have to think about, what are my other options, right? So I may be out here working a couple of jobs to try to be able to pay for that myself. I may be finding a job that will pay for school. I may be finding my chosen family as people to help support me in this process. Like, I literally may have to leave in order to thrive, because literally this person or these people are suffocating me and stopping me from growing. You oftentimes can limit your conversations with people too. So let's say they're not negative to the degree where they're necessarily holding money over your head, but when you talk to them, you leave and you just feel drained or defeated or depressed or anxious, right? So I can limit these conversations. Let's say these are people that I am choosing to have in my life, simply because of the virtue of who they are. They're family members, right? So I don't have a lot of family. So these are my parents. That's who they are. I've accepted that's who they are. I can limit my conversations with them when things start going to a point where they're negative. I can say, hey, all right, mom, dad, it was good to talk to you. Love you. I'll talk to you all later. I got some other things I need to take care of. And you can also focus conversation topics on what's appropriate for you, what you feel comfortable with, what's encouraging and nurturing for you. So you don't have to allow other people to dictate the conversation, because if they do, you know it's going to go negative. So let's keep it on a positive level. Like, oh, hey, you know what? Let's talk about what you were excited about today, what you did that you enjoyed. And some people will tell you, I didn't do anything today. I didn't enjoy anything. I don't have anything to be joyful about. Well, you know what I'm joyful about? I'm joyful about that I got an opportunity to interact with you today, because there were some people that didn't wake up on this side of the ground to be able to interact. So that's my good thing. I'll let you have it too. And I'll talk to you later, right? So we can, again, manage those conversations. You want to have an exit strategy always when you're interacting with negative people, and it's part of that plan. How am I going to get out of this situation when it goes left? That family dinner, that interaction with that coworker, that meeting with your supervisor, like what is my exit strategy going to be so that I, when it's time, can be able to leave this situation? And a lot of times I'll tell people to set it up ahead of time, like, hey, I just have a few minutes. I'm actually about to get on a call, or I have to be somewhere, right? So you already set up that the conversation is going to be limited. The interaction is going to be limited. I really want you all to trust your own judgment. A lot of times we don't grow because we don't trust ourselves enough to know what's best for us. Like, you know yourself best. And so as an expert on yourself, you are absolutely able to make decisions about what your goals and your plans are and how to get there. And you don't have to always have somebody weigh in on those things because, again, they may have a different motive and they have different perceptions and different experiences. So your path is your path. It won't look like everybody else's. That's what makes you uniquely you. Challenge yourself. When you continue to engage with people who are negative and critical, challenge yourself about like, why am I in this interaction? Why am I continuing, right? Because sometimes we just need to end relationships. Sometimes it's, okay, this person, I'm choosing to continue to engage with them, their family. Other times it is, I'm choosing to interact with this person and I don't need to. Or even more importantly, I don't want to. It's not healthy for me. So it is absolutely imperative to be able to step away from relationships that are destructive. That person you've been dating on and off for 10 years and they continue to tell you you're not going to be anything and break up with you constantly and go see other people and then come back and they're doing the same thing. Like, what are you doing in that relationship? How is that relationship serving you? What are you getting from that? That job that continues to tell you that they will work you how they want to work you, and you need to be appreciative, and they undervalue and underpay you. Why are you continuing to stay in that? Let me figure out my plan for how I'm going to get out of this job and into one that's a better fit for me and that also reinforces my worth, pays me. You know, I know all the time we don't get the pay that we want, but we definitely can get the climate that we want as we work toward the pay that we want. I think it's important for us not to internalize people's negativity. And I think we do that a lot of times. Again, that this person said it doesn't mean it's our truth. And so assertiveness training can be really helpful. Learning communication, effective communication skills can be really helpful. And assertiveness just looks like you setting boundaries. You not allowing people to have conversations with you about things that they're going to be critical about. Yeah, I appreciate that you have feedback and opinions, as we all do. However, I won't be discussing that with you. I have people that are in that field that I'm comfortable discussing that with. Here are some other things that we can talk about. Set boundaries about what you're looking for and don't compromise on those boundaries, right? If you know that you come from this critical background and you have a tendency to engage with other critical people, here is an opportunity for you to set that boundary and make the choice not to. When you see those flags, and we all see them, we just ignore them because we get lonely or horny. And so we make these bad choices. But I encourage you to stay true to yourself and what your values are and what you want. You deserve it. Create new supportive relationships. I mean, oftentimes you can find more support from other people who actually have your best interest at heart, who want to see you progress and advance, and they're not looking for something in return to manipulate you with and hold it over your head. Express yourself, express those emotions. And even when people don't agree with how you feel, that doesn't make it any less valid how you're feeling. They may have a different perception, but you are absolutely allowed to and encouraged to express how you feel. And that's why it's important for us to know how to resolve conflicts, right? So I don't want to just avoid this. I want to address this directly and hold people accountable, right? So if you can't honor my boundaries, if you can't respect me when you're talking to me and call me by my name and have a tone that's not hostile, then I'm going to end this conversation. And your behavior backs that up, right? That's part of that boundary. Because if I tell you I'm no longer going to put up with this and then I continue to keep putting up with it, essentially my word doesn't mean anything to you and you'll continue to violate those boundaries. So when I say it, I need to be able to back it up behaviorally. And as you're talking to people, you give them examples of behavioral things like, hey, here's some examples of some things that you do that make me uncomfortable or make me feel minimized or devalued, right? So behavioral evidence, because people will argue with how you feel, it's very difficult for them to argue with concrete behavioral evidence. Now, again, critical people are very good at being able to manipulate conversations, but if you stick to your boundary, you can offset that by continuing to drive home the point of this is how I want to be treated. Because again, we often tell people what we don't want them to do, but then we don't tell them what to do instead. So the other part of that is, here is how I expect to be treated, so that you give them examples of what that's going to look like. So when they violate that, you can say, as per our discussion, is one of my favorite terms, those are unacceptable behaviors to me. Here's the only things that are acceptable. Make sure that you are engaging in dialogue with people that actually can dialogue with you, though, right? So that's the other part of it, is we often try to talk to people who are ignoring us or not responding, withholding attention, those kind of things. And then they, laugh about it later, and they're talking about, oh, look at how they did this, recording you, that kind of stuff. Please don't engage in that. One of the things about learning to be assertive and setting boundaries is to recognize when it's just time to walk away. So don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be devalued trying to explain yourself to someone and set that boundary. Just recognize that that's probably not a person that you want to interact with. So remember, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself about that background, the critical and negative people that have been in your life, how they showed up in your life or didn't show up in your life, how that has affected you, so that you can be able to evaluate and find different strategies. So how we stop the cycle is that I recognize the pattern, right? Step one. And then two is I put some changes in place. I change my behavior. I can't change them. So be honest, be well, most definitely be encouraged.